Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the fellow students here in the room with me, and good evening to you fellow students who are joining us online tonight. My name is John. Welcome to our Discovery Wednesday class with Guy Finley. Our classes on Wednesday usually last about 90 minutes. Guy will present a talk of about 60 minutes on the topic that you see on the screen below you and that we see on the screen here in the room. And after that, we take a short break, and then we come back for a discussion, an open Q&A session in which we can ask questions. Those of you online can ask questions as well. So we hope that you'll participate and share with us the 90 minutes that we have together and help each other learn a little something a little more deeply. If you're online, please use the chat areas to send in your questions and comments. Those chat areas are being monitored, and your comments and questions will be relayed into the room. Those of you on GoToWebinar, please take the opportunity to talk directly to Guy if you wish. And again, please do participate. And finally, for those of us in the room, just a reminder, if you have a cell phone, please do check to make sure you've turned it off. Here's our topic tonight, and then I will turn it over to Guy. The wisdom you need to stop struggling with unwanted moments once and for all.
Good evening, everyone. Those of you in the room and those of you joining us from wherever you are in the world, whatever day or time it is, you're always in the right place if you want to learn something new, so that you might be able to look at yourself with new eyes. And in the light of that new awareness, begin to invite changes that can't take place in your life without it. Our topic this evening, just to make sure I'm talking to the right group of people, is the wisdom you need to stop struggling with unwanted moments once and for all. How many of you have unwanted moments more than once and for all? It's a strange thing about unwanted moments. They're like a cat that you accidentally fed, and no matter what you do, it shows up when you walk out the door, when you sit in your chair. There's always a little surprise sitting there for you. So before I read the key lesson, I want to explain to you that I have done my level best to try to put into words a way in which you can act from a new understanding that will turn into a completely different kind of wisdom that, if you embrace it, will indeed help you stop struggling with these unwanted moments that keep showing up in your life. I mean, excuse the expression, but what a drag. Over and over again, revisited and re-imprisoned by moments that seem to come out of the blue, get a grip on you, and then do with you what they always do, which is reduce you to someone who believes the only thing that's possible for you to do in that moment is to struggle again to escape what you have never escaped in your life. So I decided I'd read the key lesson tonight because it's a little wordy. But I will explain to you every word in this key lesson before we're done. So if you have any interest at all, or I should say, if you're, these unwanted moments are like relatives. Not all of them. There's a relative here and there that's relatively all right. but that just show up with their suitcase, with their hand extended for some kind of loan. And what they're asking you for is a place to stay in your soul and to pay yourself with everything that keeps them in your life, while you silently seethe because you're too weak to understand how complicit you are in the relationship with these thoughts and feelings, these unwanted moments that keep visiting you, and that you keep trying to figure out how you can lock the door and keep them away from you. You can't keep them away from you any more than you can keep your shadow from following you. Here's the key lesson. Our unconscious resistance to any unwanted moment ensures its continuation. And here's why. There's no lingering resistance that's not a creation of some form of unseen identification with the moment being resisted. To this understanding, add the following insight by whose light we are helped set free. And this is the crux of tonight's talk. Identification is fixation, which means the more we struggle to escape any unwanted moment, the more we make ourselves a captive of it. That's the whole lesson. Now I'm going to spend 50 minutes explaining it. If you knew that identification is fixation, that the moment you are identified with any thought, feeling, wish, want, anger, fear, the moment you are identified with it, it is you who fixes that moment in your life by you not wanting to be in that moment that your consciousness creates in its unconscious nature. What would it be worth? And here's the other thing. When I say what would it be worth, so much I want to talk to you about. You know, we often talk about this idea, and it's nice to hear, isn't it? I'm going to learn to want what life wants. Boy, you hear that idea and you go, wow, yeah, that's it. I'm going to want what life wants, because not wanting it hasn't done me much good. So this man, I have some respect for him. I've heard him speak, and he seems to make sense. He says I should want what life wants. But you know what? I'm so on board with that while I'm having my coffee and watching Monday Night Football. But the minute that my team loses to Michigan State next Sunday, gonna get trounced, I might add. The minute that happens, I don't know what in the heck to do with myself, because I'm so angry. I'm so full of a resistance and a resentment I didn't even know was living inside of me. Who thought that I depended on a team with a mascot called a Wolverine? Is that right? No? All right. It doesn't matter. You get the point, do you not? So I've got this whole image of myself. I want what life wants. I'm going to let go and let God. That's beautiful. Until I'm seized by the throat. And in that moment, it's pretty evident to me that the idea I have about myself as being some kind of a spiritual giant really belongs to a little mini-me that talks to me in my ear. He's right there telling me all these things, and it's never always somehow or other telling me that the condition I'm in is once and for all, again, here and inescapable. And now I must do what I've always done in the face of these moments, which is to struggle with them. So I want to tell you, especially given your present level of development, and in particular, whatever the immediate influence is, it is impossible for you to want, in quotes, some painful experience that you meet born out of resisting it. You cannot want that moment. So I want you to throw that idea away that you are capable of wanting a moment that you don't want. But, and this is big, and I hope I won't pull any wisdom teeth here with this. It is possible to know better than to not want that experience. it is possible to know better than to not want that experience. Because our life is a binary set of reactions. I want, I don't want. And anything that I don't want doesn't exist because of what I do want. And what I do want eventually creates what I don't want. So I live vacillating back and forth between a set of opposites that allows this consciousness to ceaselessly form one identity based on want or not want after another. But I'm saying to you that instead of trying to want some moment, going, I love God, everything's going to be perfect, this is all going to work out, and which is all falderoy, you're kidding nobody but yourself in that moment, because no more do you find yourself swallowing that pill of optimism than it turns poison in you, and then you hate yourself or despise somebody else for not living up to what you thought they needed to do so that you could be free as imagined. It is possible to know better than to not want the experience we have. Now, what's the option? You following me? Here's a moment I don't want. All I know to do with moments I don't want is what? Is look at the moment I don't want and then let the reaction seem to reconcile for me through the choices it provides a way to escape and be released from the moment. But there's something else you can do. And that is to know better than to not want that experience. Well, if I don't want the experience, or I do, what does it mean to know better than to not want the experience? What could that possibly mean? It would mean the experience is there of the resistance, of wishing things weren't the way it were, of being captured by all kinds of conflicted thoughts and feelings, telling me what I have to do to get out of this, and to see all of that action as being a complete mistake in terms of identifying with it as it presents itself to me. So that to recognize this moment, what? For instance, and we talk about this at length, I'll go through it quickly. Every moment of our life, our real moments of life, are by their true nature celestial in origin. Every moment. What does that mean? It means that whether we see it or not, the moment that comes along reveals, and I would add always for the first time, what lies concealed in the level of consciousness that's being acted on by that initial influence. That is the nature, real nature of creation. Something is always acting on what is always passive and producing out of their union the revelation of what was and no longer stands as needed, so that something has succeeded it and become the new thing. This is what real life is. So that moment means that in that interaction, that it's not only possible to look at that moment where ordinarily I don't want it, because by default, all I know to do is to have the reaction that resists the revelation of myself and summarily refuse the experience, or the other hand is to recognize that moment and that I have lived it before. That is the only way it is to know better than to not want that moment. Because what good does it do me to not want a moment when I actually recognize that I have been there 100 times not wanting it, and it does nothing to save me? Do you understand what I'm leading to? The only way it's possible to not want any particular moment is to first recognize it as being something that has come up inside of you again to be relived. To be relived. Now, who would relive a moment they don't want willingly? Please? Would you ever relive a moment that you don't want willingly? Would you agree over and over again to reincarnate a certain set of negative thoughts and feelings that grab you, drag you down? If you actually understood, you know what? This is the millionth time that I have been here. But a million times it fails me to see the fact of the matter is I am once again reliving another unwanted moment. Why don't I see I am reliving another unwanted moment? Wouldn't that be a valuable question to ask yourself? Because if we're honest, I'm already irritated with somebody. The man at the post office has pulled my strings. The person in the freeway has pushed me left or right. I get the email, more irritating announcements about things I don't care about. Everybody's bothering me all the time. I just relive everything. Anxious. And before I even know it, I'm jumping through a hoop in order to try to change the experience, failing to see it's the same consciousness producing the same experience, only using different moments in time to repeat itself. Yes? Each new moment of life is inseparable from the light that reveals it and gives us the experience of that moment accordingly. Let's go slow. Each new moment of life is inseparable from the light that first reveals it. Now, what does that mean? On the high side, I'm out someplace and the sun breaks through the fog. The trees are all glistening with light and turning into Christmas trees. I come home at night sometimes when it's really cold, and the madrone leaves have a wax on the back of them, and it's like somebody turned on the tree. It's just miraculous. And in a moment like that, when you see something as beautiful as that, or maybe I should tell you about another story about Big Dog. No, I'm not going to. These moments, these impressions that you have them, when you have them, they are revealing to you, through you, something that can only be experienced by you when an influence seemingly outside of you has stirred something you're unaware of within you. And in the marriage of that light and the nature that it acts upon, there is the sudden recognition of something that is altogether new and true and that is very delightful to you, yes or no? So we love that scenario, but what about those moments where you driving up the street and expecting to see the lights on your madrone trees from the headlights and your battery goes dead? I mean, just as an example, any one of 1,000 different things can do what? Each one of these moments where the light reveals what it does is the experience of the moment accordingly. So our experience can't be separated from whatever the consciousness is made aware of in that moment. That is my experience, isn't it? I actually experience the content momentarily brought up into my awareness of my own consciousness. And the content of that consciousness is revealed by the influence, the light that acts upon it. I'm either for that or against that as a rule. But there's something much higher to be than for or against what the light reveals to you in your consciousness. Because just for an example, if the light is revealing something to me in my consciousness and I love it, I'm all on board with it. I'm a beautiful person. It's a beautiful afternoon. Life is going to be beautiful. But bring me something that's not beautiful. I want nothing to do with the moment, and I want nothing to do with myself. But what is it that I really want nothing to do with in that moment? What is the nature of that unwanted moment? I don't want the experience of my own consciousness. I just don't want it. But see, if I really knew that what I don't want is an experience that not only I can't avoid, but that I'm being given for the purpose of transcending it, would I agree to instantaneously reach this resistance point and push everything away? Would I, and even further to the point of our talk, which we're going to get to now, you're going to come on board here, would I struggle over and over and over again with those conditions that seem to keep showing up and throwing me into this prison that I can't stand being in? Would I struggle with it if I knew better than that? Or would I find another way to struggle with those moments? So to help us discover what we're looking at here, I've created a list. I've checked it twice, and most of you aren't nice. Are you nice? Are you nice? Or are you only nice when you think Santa is coming? And God help those of you that idea bothers. I'm nice as long as you're nice. You stop being nice, I'm naughty. K-N-O-T-T-Y. I'm filled with bundles of irritation that I don't know what to do with other than to resist you or it or them because I see you as responsible for that pain. And then my struggle is always to try to do what? What has never changed anything. Let's bring up the list and we're going to go into it together. Ready? Let me see you look ready. Here's what Chris did. That may have fooled your kindergarten teacher, okay? Here's the list. What is one of the unwanted moments or more, should you choose to share them, that in spite of all your struggles to transcend or escape their pain, return to recapture you and summarily resentence you to relive that experience with what feels like no chance of parole? What is one of the unwanted moments or more, should you choose to share them, that in spite of all your struggles to transcend or escape their pain, return to recapture you and summarily resentence you to relive that experience with what feels like no chance of parole? Now, I went ahead and made a couple comments to prime the pump, as it were, and then I'm going to bring you in the room here, and of course I invite everyone on Wednesday nights to participate. First of all, does everybody understand the question? So here's an example of an unwanted moment that returns again and again and that I struggle with in order to somehow or other transcend the pain in it. Finding myself in a rush returns over and over and over again. It's not even, you can't even, if you had all the fingers on every human being in the world, you couldn't count the number of times in which some form of anxiety knocks at the door and says, "Let me in, will you?" Yes or no? Is that not one of those unwanted moments? How about this? Conflict, once again, with someone or some moment in my life. I was thinking, isn't it strange that a person can have an enemy, struggle to escape the pain of having an enemy? You know, the pain you have isn't because of your enemies, it's because you have an enemy. That's the pain. How many times has those unwanted moments came where he said, she did this, that, or the other, and the first thing that happens is what? I am captured by that moment I don't want, and in that unwanted moment, my mind goes on into high speed, and it struggles to figure out why they are the way they are, what I can do about them, and all the rest of that. Whether it's friend, family, or foe, it makes no difference whatsoever, does it? How about reliving regrets? How many times are you going to be sitting somewhere, talking to someone, doing something, taking whatever it is, and your mind will bring up a memory of some painful experience in your life? Now you go, But every time that happens, the moment you were in, whose content is as open as the universe and your relationship to it, is consolidated, is crushed into this minute little misery called, I don't want this experience. And then the experience you don't want that came out of something in you revisiting an image or an idea, then it summarily rejects with all of its force not the fact that it was drawn into that consideration, but that it believes it was delivered into the hands of its enemy again, and therefore must struggle one more time to prove them wrong or to prove yourself right. Yes or no? So now I'm turning it into the room, and I'm looking for the board to contribute, if that can happen. Kate, Ellen.
Being anxious about some upcoming event.
Any form of anxiety over any upcoming event. How many times are there events in your life where it could be as simple as putting on a clean pair of shoes and going to Walmart or whatever it is that you're going to do, and you become anxious because you want to make sure that the people in Walmart think you're something special. You laugh at that, but you will dress to the nines. You're going to some restaurant or out with significant people, and you can't wait to show them what you are by what you put on. And every moment that you take in that consideration is filled with the fear of not being seen as you've imagined yourself being. So you turn the very moment, it turns the very moment that it says it wants into the conflict of not wanting to go through what happens if I don't get confirmed as I've imagined myself to be. Yes, Terry.
Complaining.
That's a fairly common one, isn't it? Terry said complaining. Isn't it true that more often than we can speak of, something takes place and in that moment we are filled with complaints about conditions that in one way or another wouldn't exist if we weren't complicit in them? Complaining does nothing. Complaining over an unwanted moment does what to that unwanted moment? It puts it in the center of the table of our mind, doesn't it? Please, Sally.
Impatience with something, someone, or myself.
Yeah, any form of impatience. Any form of impatience. We think to ourselves that we wouldn't be impatient if people weren't slow. If life would move at the speed that it's supposed to, there wouldn't be a problem, would there? Do you understand? Here goes the whole list that just showed up. Thanks, Katie. Chrissy, I'll go to you first and then we'll get this.
Not measuring up.
Yeah, that's a big one. I don't think to myself that I'm inadequate until a condition appears in which I have to appear adequate. Then suddenly it seems to me I may not fit the bill, and the only way I can fit the bill is by dressing to the nines or otherwise pretending to be something I'm not. Over here, and that was actually one that Neil put up. The board filled up so quick, darn. Isabella, frustration with the little things going haywire. Steve, when I'm in a rush, I spill something. The impermanence of things. I was counting on that. The minute I can't count on that, then that becomes unwanted. And I fail to see that the reason that becomes unwanted is why? Because I was counting on it. Rebecca, feeling inadequate, yes. Being misunderstood. Randall, after making a mistake, what will people think of me? That runs through so many of the ways in which we interact with each other. Passing time, it's too late for me. What are you looking at when something in you says, spiritually or financially, whatever it is, it's too late? What am I looking at when it seems like it's too late for me? Anybody? Well, you know, see, that's too easy. You said the past. If you knew that, you wouldn't. No, what I'm looking at when I say it's too late for me is my idea of what it is that I should have done or could have been that I wasn't. And so I look at what I could have been or shouldn't have been, should have been that I wasn't, and in the moment of that comparison, I'm not made a captive of the way that I am in this moment. I'm made a captive of a consciousness that has measured me and found me guilty and then tells me all I can do with what's become of me is to not want what's become of me. And it would be impossible to not want what's become of me unless I had some idea of what I was supposed to become. Please try to see this with me. Joan, worry, of course, indecision, my expectations being unmet, even when I don't clearly acknowledge those expectations. Yeah, I'm going to go into that pretty deeply, Juan. Janice, being upset with events that I have no control over. How many of you get upset with conditions you have no control over? Now, I just ask you, I don't know how much time I have. What would be an example of getting upset with a condition I have no control over? Everything. Please, one of you tell me what you have control over. As you get older, you lose control over everything. I'm not just talking about the world around you. What is it that you have control over? Hello? See, you're all going, well, I don't have control over anything. And yet, not I try, I get negative when it seems that what control I had was taken from me. So I enter the moment with a belief that I do have and must have control. And when life says, I don't think so, the way that I prove to myself that I have control is to lose control over myself in my resistance to that moment. Isn't it phenomenal if you see this? In the room, maybe one or two more, and then we'll go. Did I get you, Sally? You got a bunch of them, okay. Resentment. Resentment. God. There may be no greater waste of time in your life than resenting a human being for whatever it is that they said or done. And do you know why there may be no greater waste of time than resenting another human being? Anybody want to throw some? You do pretty good at that, don't you, resenting others? Why is that a waste of time? Because it's misdirection. What I don't want about them doesn't exist with what I demand about them. What I don't want about them doesn't exist without what I have demanded from them. Can you not see that? But see, you don't think to yourself that you demand everybody treat you with a certain accord. You know that you feel that when they don't do it. You don't think to yourself the reason the moment with that person isn't wanted because whatever they're doing doesn't match your expectation of what they should do with their life. But the moment you see anybody doing anything, acting out any other behavior than the one you have decided is right for them, they're all wrong. And you believe that the moment you don't want is because of what they are. The moment you don't want is not because of what they are, is it? It is because of something that I have in this consciousness that is already determined for me who and what they should be, and when they are not, I am not happy. Yes or no? All right, that's pretty good. Now, we went through a fairly good list of things, didn't we? Now, how many of you recognize so many of those unwanted moments? Now listen, that just almost show up on schedule. And this is an interesting sidebar. I don't have time to go into it. But in a certain respect, they do show up on schedule. Because this what is celestial in nature is very, in one respect, I shouldn't say clockwork-like, but in terms of karma, it never stops bringing to the forefront whatever has been buried in the background. And conditions will consistently bring about through different circumstances, even relationships, the revelation of a nature that has not changed, that has not gone through the transformation the celestial body requires of it in order to take its place in the greater scheme of things. So it is like that. But that's why I said, and it's an important idea, it's extraordinary that my consciousness continues to experience in not such a happy way the content of itself through what seems to be totally disparate circumstances. So that the same anxiousness is there whether I'm pouring my coffee or 3 days later on the way to meet somebody for a meeting. Seems like those are different circumstances, and I blame the appearance of that unwanted pain on this individual circumstance, don't I? So it's the circumstance that becomes unwanted. But what we're looking at is that it's not the circumstance that's unwanted. It is a consciousness that constantly meets what it doesn't want because it is being challenged in that moment and therefore experiencing this sense of threat inherent in all of it. Okay? All right. Transition. What's the common denominator, all said and done, hidden in us reliving these dark moments? What is the common denominator? You know, I started to write, I looked for another word because I realized most people today, especially our children, have no idea what a denominator is. Is that what the Senate does when it wants to bring somebody in? It should denominate somebody. No. Common denominator. Ellen, what is a common denominator? Okay, we're not going there. The denominator is, it's the bottom half of the fraction. It's that which divides. It's that which determines the nature of the relationship between itself and the top. What's the common denominator in these unwanted moments that we keep reliving? Heidi? I'm the star? No, you're not. David? Identification. Anybody else? Okay, so look, the main ideas here. The common denominator for this study is resistance. It is impossible for us to resist any given moment without being, prior to that moment, some form of unseen insistence that we had placed on the moment, even though it hadn't got there yet. How else can I explain why I'm suddenly angry at you unless I came into the moment with an expectation of who and what you should do and be, not knowing that I came that way, but the moment that it is clear that you are not what my preference is in order to prove myself as whatever I am, the moment that appears, what happens to me? Instantaneous resistance. So I want you to put together in your mind the idea that it is impossible to resist some moment that you don't want. It is impossible to resist some moment you don't want unless prior to that moment, in this unconscious nature was seated something that was looking distinctly for something from that moment to prove to that consciousness that it was as it imagined itself being. Please? Yes or no? Yes? Yes. So, no resistance without insistence? Yes? And no insistence without what? And no insistence with, look, do you think to yourself that you insist the weather is going to be sunny? No, you don't know that I that doesn't want doesn't exist until what it doesn't want. At the moment that what it doesn't want is there, that I, the experience of it that you don't want, is all there is in that moment. That is a form of unseen insistence based on what? Based on the fact that I don't know it about myself, or even if I do, I am attached to and I am dependent upon at all costs whatever the condition is that I've imagined needs to be in place so that I'm not in pain. No resistance without what? No insistence without what? Attachment and dependency. And now we're getting to it. And no attachment and dependency, no conflict with life without what? Identification. I'm working your mind to help you see something that you have yet to be able to unwind in these moments when you are overtaken by something capturing your attention. Suddenly I'm filled with resistance. All I know when I'm filled with the moment I don't want is to not want it and let my reaction guide me, or to try to figure out what I do want, failing to see that the moment I don't want only exists because the day before of what I said I needed to have. So it's inextricably tied together, isn't it? No conflict with life without being identified. And here's the point. Identified with what? Identified with what? Listen to me. There is no identification without imagination. You can't be identified with something until you first imagine it. Please, it's simple in one respect, it's simple math. How can I be identified with how you should be unless I've imagined the way you need to be so that I can be the way I've imagined myself? So that there is no possible form of being identified with the weather, with the food, with my position in life. There is no possibility unless I have identified with something that in my identification, attachment, and dependency on what I've imagined confirms myself as I've imagined myself to be. So that image and identity are a secret singularity. Image and identity are a secret singularity. That's why it's so hard for us to understand when something we don't want comes, why it is that well, why shouldn't I just imagine something I do to get past this moment? Because everything you imagine will bring with it is part and parcel of you, one, avoiding the experience of the identity that came into that moment, and then replacing it with another identity derived from something else that you've imagined and attached and become dependent upon. Please, yes or no? So to understand this means that every single time I run into an unwanted moment, basically all I know how to do is to do what? Is to imagine a way that I'm free of that moment. To imagine who's responsible for it, which is still looking for a way to free myself from the moment. It's just a little downstream when I finally get you to admit what's wrong with you. Do you see that? So I'm imagining what I hope will free me, which is from an identity that doesn't exist without what I've imagined. I'm imagining what I need to free me when everything I imagine is in fact a form of captivity for myself. Can you think of things that you feel like, we went over it, that whole list, what is it that I feel like I'm a captive of? Well, you can name conditions, but the conditions aren't the reason for your captivity. We proved that. The source of the captivity is that those conditions threaten something that I was identified with. And when I was identified with it and it wasn't playing out, I'm threatened by that moment. But what's threatened by that moment? See, this is a long way of trying to get you to see, as best I can, that in those moments, what is actually going on? Going back to this idea of struggling with unwanted moments, what is actually going on in that moment? Here comes the moment, I don't want it. No. Where is all of my attention placed in the moment that I don't want? Where is all of my attention placed in the moment that I don't want? It's placed on the thing that I'm resisting. As goes my attention, as comes my experience. So Christine goes to see the good doctor. And she's complaining to the good doctor, and maybe you recognize some of these complaints. I can't stop reliving an argument I had. I know I've been working hard to transcend all of this, and I'm trying to let go and let God, and I have faith in Christ, and I trust the four dharmas and the shmarmas, and then I eat shawarma when none of that works. I've done all of these things, and I'm still a wreck. I don't know what to do. What else, he asked? Well, I'm pretty relentless with judging myself. When I can't make people change or do things that I want, I think to myself, it's my weakness, and I turn on myself. And the more I turn on myself, the more angry I get. The more angry I get, the more I create conditions that I can't stop reliving because I didn't mean to be that kind of person. It's like a dark nightmare, she said. Anything else? She said, what else do you need? She said, yeah, just simply, I dwell on disappointments. And I know better. I've been coming to you long enough, the good doctor representing her relationship with the truth. I dwell on disappointments. It's uncanny. I don't even think to myself, I'm going to go find something to be disappointed over. It just shows up at my door. And I can't stand it, she told the doctor. Please give me some insight into what is going on. And to hurry the story along, he said, no problem, Christine, I know exactly what's going on. I can give you the diagnosis right now if you want it. If I want it, she said, of course I want it. What is it? He said, you are struggling with fibular. Now, fib is a euphemism, isn't it? Yes. You're struggling with with fibular. Well, what is fibular? Is it fatal? Oh, yeah. If it's not treated, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to destroy you. What is fibular, she said. He said, write it down. It's the letters F-B-U-R, fibular. Fixed by unconscious resistance. Fixation by unconscious resistance. Who would believe in their right mind? Christine didn't. She asked the doctor to explain. What do you mean, fixation by unconscious resistance? What does that even mean? He said, simply put, the more identified, the more fixed our reactions, our thoughts, the more of them and the more rigid they are, meaning the more we lend ourselves to that resistance, the more isolated we find ourselves feeling in that moment. And the more isolated we find ourselves feeling in that moment, the more we resist the moment, blaming the moment for the sense of being alone, betrayed, and isolated. So the very act of not understanding that what you are resisting in that unwanted moment is not the moment your mind is blaming. What you are resisting is the fact that your condition relives time and time again certain conditions, certain content of itself, so that it can keep resisting the experience of itself and give itself something to do with those unwanted moments that promises to free it from itself. The main lesson in this talk is pretty simple. The greater grows our dependency on what we already know. When you have an unwanted moment, what do you call on to deal with it? When you have an unwanted moment, what do you call on to deal with it? For one thing, there's no me calling on it, but my reaction knows only one place to go find solutions, and that is from the experience of my past. That's all it knows to do. is to return to the content of itself and then look at it and think to itself, well, I must not have put all this together properly the last time, but this time I won't fail. And so that consciousness reconfigures the content of its own past in order to produce a new path forward that in the imagining of the new path and in the identification with the new path produces for itself the promise that the moment will come when the path is shut off and there you are again resisting the very condition that that consciousness created. Can you see that with me? We are locked out without having any notion whatsoever that that has happened to us. How do I summarize this for you? With the key lesson that I started the talk. Identification is what? Is fixation. Isn't it extraordinary that I can be fixated on what's wrong with you, ask myself 100,000 questions about why you are the way you are and why that happened the way it did? Do you not? Do you not do that? Failing to see that the questions the mind asks about the moments it doesn't want are a misdirection on the part of the mind so that it can give you another false answer to be identified with and so to keep you in that dark loop. There are no questions needed when you see the answer. That's what this work is about. This work is about having run through this gamut endlessly of meeting these moments we don't want, struggling with them, struggling with people, struggling with our own problems, our own unhappiness, our own disappointments, and then wondering why, after all of these years and all of those struggles, nothing changes other than the fact that some slight coloration of the conflict in that moment makes me feel as if this moment may be a little different. Listen to this. So maybe there's another answer for it other than the million times I've tried the same solutions my consciousness offers. Identification is fixation. How does that get through? First of all, could you see that if you actually, here I am, how many of you expect or suspect, or maybe even while I'm talking, you already don't want the moment. If I find myself not wanting the moment, I don't want the news from the doctor. I don't want to see the financial things. I don't want to look at the people I work with. I don't want anything to do with most of the emails I get. Everything's a problem. Everything's a problem by and large. What if I knew that everything that's a problem is only a problem because time and time and time again I have lived that problem, unsuccessfully solved that problem, and know nothing other to do in that moment than to believe that my resistance to the unwanted moment proves I am other than the moment I don't want. What if I saw that? How many of you suspect there will be an unwanted moment before you get home? Isn't it? It's amazing. They're like, what are those things that attach themselves to sharks? Remora. Yeah, they're parasites, actually. They're parasites. Negative thoughts and feelings and the consciousness that creates them is a form of psychic parasitic activity. But here I am, and I'm open my computer, I'll pick up the phone, I'll see somebody calling, and like that. I can't resist a moment I haven't lived before. I can't resist a moment I haven't lived before. Otherwise, how do I recognize it as something to be resisted? See, that you never think to yourself, how do I recognize this moment is unwanted? How do I recognize that? Because I've had it. And I've had it because it's part of this consciousness that doesn't know what to do with what it doesn't want other than to come up with a new imagination, identification, and the next thing to be fixated on. Say it with me. Identification is? So if I knew that identification is fixation, and you do see this, do you not? At least sitting here. If I know that identification is fixation, then why in the name of God would I agree to resist some condition that for the fact that I'm resisting that unwanted moment again, I am fixated not just on that moment as the source of my pain, but ensuring that that consciousness will reincarnate itself again, hiding from itself the fact that its fixation is its pain. Now, do you understand that enough to at least take what I've said here tonight and begin to struggle with it to some extent? What we don't want, again, is the pain of reliving the struggle of trying to escape our own resistance. That's what we don't want. We don't want the pain we continue to struggle with, believing we can resist our way out of what we don't want. Can you resist your way out of what you don't want? Why can't you resist your way out of what you don't want? Why can't you resist your way out of what you don't want? It doesn't work. Because there's no resistance without insistence. There's no insistence without attachment and dependency. And there's no attachment and dependency without some image and corresponding identity. So the fact that I resist the condition is secretly the unseen act of a consciousness trying to prove to itself again that it is other than the condition it resists. It is not other than the condition it resists. The condition only exists because that consciousness insists and is identified with what it is. Will you work with it? At least try. Will you see what you can see? The more we try to escape what we don't want, the more we're fixed in it. You can see that, and the more you do, the clearer you will become, the nearer you will be to what? The one solution to all of your struggles with unwanted moments. Because what is my struggle with an unwanted moment? Is it the moment I'm struggling with now? I'm struggling with the consciousness that has made the moment that way, aren't I? Will I deliberately struggle to keep something in place that the more I have it in place, the more pain I'm in? That's up to you, isn't it? Do your work. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
right, everyone, welcome back to part 2 of class. We're going to go into our Q&A with Guy in just a moment. Just want to make a quick announcement about our schedule. So if you're new and this is the first time you're joining us, just want to make sure that you know that we have several opportunities for you to tune in each week for these classes. So of course we meet on Wednesdays, every Wednesday here on GoToWebinar, and live stream out to Facebook and YouTube as well. 6 p.m. Pacific time, where we have the talk with Guy or the talk by Guy and a Q&A. On Fridays at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we have a study group, and that's also through GoToWebinar, and that's where 2 longtime students will give talks on the topic from Sunday, and you're welcome to join in with that. It's an hour-long class, and it's a great way to take what you're learning and just go more in depth with it, and you know, do what you do in a study group. So you're welcome to join us for that. And then on Saturday mornings, this is a great way to start the weekend. We have, Guy has a talk on insighttimer.com, which is a sort of a meditation app type of platform. And every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time, he is on their website at insighttimer.com/live, and you can find him there. And then, like I said, that's just a great way to start the week. And let me tell you what the topic for this Sunday is going to be. I have it right here. How to know and grow into heaven's plan for you. I love that. So do join us on Saturdays if you can. And then finally, we have a class on Sunday mornings here in Pacific time anyway, 9:30 a.m. Pacific, where it's just like the format from tonight. So Guy gives a talk and we have an open Q&A. So let's go ahead and just go right into our Q&A with Guy. If you're on GoToWebinar and you want to speak with Guy directly, you can raise your hand by clicking or tapping the hand icon that you see there in the control panel, or if you're on a mobile device, you should see it there somewhere on your screen. That lets me know that you want to speak with him. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can put a question or a comment in the chat area and I'll read it to Guy for you. I'll be your proxy. And yeah, we're ready to get started. Guy, do you have anything you want to add before we just jump into it?
I'm good to go.
You're good to go. All right, sounds good. Well, I see Jill has raised her hand, and Jill, I'm happy to see you made it here. Jill and I have been working to try and get her connected. So I'm going to take myself off and unmute Jill, and we'll start with her.
Okay.
Hi, Guy.
Hi, Jill.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm wondering, sometimes I listen to your talks and everything's real clear and I understand. I mean, not totally understand, but some of the things seep through.
Yes.
What you're saying. And then other times I listen to your talks and the next thing I know, 20 minutes went by and I just didn't get anything. And I think, what happened? And is this part of my learning curve? Is just seeing that I'm not there presently.
What's wrong with you, Jill? Gosh. Jill, treading some water carefully here. These teachings are not of this world. They come into it. Now, if in any way I have made myself seem unique, it is a misrepresentation. Because everyone is uniquely created to receive these celestial seeds and to see that they are at least stored, if not planted, where under the proper circumstances, those seeds will germinate and begin to lift that consciousness, much as a tree lifts the crown of its leaves and its fruits to receive the light from the sun. When we are exposed to ideas that we have virtually no reference point at all to, the words, the language, the structure of the sentences, the seemingly circuitous way in which things revolve around each other, all of those nuances must gradually find a way into the soul that willingly opens itself to those impressions, so that the impressions feed the part of the soul capable of recognizing and eventually realizing itself as inseparable from the teachings. That's not overnight. I guarantee you, if I was to ask the students in the room, and maybe Jill, from your own experience, you could use that if you wanted to. So I'll ask you, has there been times when you've picked up a book that is true, not the, I almost said a bad word, not the crud, that the world wants to sell you so you can be confirmed in some flattering spiritual image of yourself? Have you not picked up a book and looked at something and then maybe revisited it in a week or two or a year even? And then you look at that and you read it and you go, oh, it's aha, wow. God, why didn't I see that before? Jill, have you ever had that moment?
Sorry, I muted her. Hang on, let me unmute her again. Go ahead, Jill.
Yes, I have had a moment, many moments like that.
All right, so how is that possible? I read something and I might as well have been having a snooze fest. I was eating my sandwich and I blew through it, and then a year, 10 years later, my mind says, what was that thing about wanting or attention or need? What was that? And then you find that you go back and you look at, God, why didn't I receive that when it was given to me? And we fail to understand that it was received as best we were capable of receiving it in that moment. And that nature, that consciousness had to grow. It isn't you and I who grow, Jill. It's a misnomer to believe that you grow. What grows is your relationship with an infinite consciousness whose experience as you enter into it seems to be expansive. But what's expansive is your relationship to what is true, not you who is expansive. My mind was looking for a silly joke then, but. So here I am, and I'm listening to Guy, and sometimes I go, I like you said, I get it. I know I don't fully get it, but I get it a little bit. And then there's other times when I just don't, what the heck is he talking about? Identification is fixation. I'll give you fixation. I'll fix your wagon. Yeah, I said, what is he talking about? And then tomorrow maybe you'll be sitting there and you'll burn your bread because you fell asleep listening to some song on the radio. You'll go to the toaster, and instead of burning yourself over the fact that you burned your toast, you'll see you fell asleep. You were fixated on something that kept your attention from where it needed to be. And you'll make a connection. And each connection strengthens faith. I hope that helps, Jill. We can go on, Kate. Patricia wants to come up to the mic.
Hello, my name is Patricia. This morning I read something that said, and it reminded me of this talk, and I don't know, I can't quite make the leap, but what Guy just got done talking about to Jill also connects with it, I think. And what I read was, if a person is born blind and their sight is restored late in life, they still can't see like you and I. They need a medium to go like maybe how they used to see when they were blind, through touch or whatever. They need something to be there so they'll never see like a normal person that was brought up with sight. And I thought that was very interesting. It reminded me of what you're saying today. We have to have this conditioning. We have to have all this in order to rise above it, to grow out of it, for our consciousness to grow. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I hope you do.
There are many facets to what you've tried to express there. One of them is that a person who is sighted from the beginning, the entire neural construct of their frontal lobe, or whatever the aspect is of their consciousness involved in relating the exterior to the interior, it doesn't grow the same system, and so it can't see the same way we do. On the other hand, another way of saying that is that because I couldn't see, I created a different construct with reality based on images and ideas that were used from what I did know to match what I couldn't see, and my reality was a construct of that. So when I suddenly see, all that construct no longer serves what it used to, so I cannot relate to life in the same way that I did when I couldn't see. So there's an infinite variety of ways to look at that. But it all points to this idea that my consciousness is inseparable from my experience, and my experience, whether it's through my eyes, my ears, my nose, my mouth, my sense of touch, all of that is conducive to creating this relationship we have with life and our experience of it. Over to you, Kate.
Well, I'm going to have to say over to someone else. There are no hands in the queue, no questions. Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to speak?
I don't see people rushing to the stage. So we'll just give it 30 seconds, Kate. And if
Yeah, here, Robert and Neil both just raised their hands. Great. So we have 2 people in the queue now. Let me go to Robert.
we waited too long.
Go ahead, Robert.
Good evening.
Hi, Robert.
Hello. Hi, Robert. Hey, how you doing? When you were making the list earlier,
Yes, sir.
related to there cannot be any identification without imagination,
Yes, sir.
one of the things I was noticing recently is, as it comes with years, is a litany of lost opportunities come up and want to beat me up. And I will go through that list, and sometimes I'm still looking for more pain. So I'll say, hey, I think I may have missed one of those lost opportunities. Let me think about this a little bit further. And it's just amazing that this mind, and I'm watching this mind just beat itself up.
Yeah.
And I just thought I would interject that and be interested in hear what you might have to say about that.
First of all, that's humorous, although not in the throes of that torment, that the mind visits upon itself. Now, it should be evident the mind makes a victim of itself. The question that you have to ask yourself isn't so much why does the mind do that, but why in the name of God am I a middleman or a middlewoman in the midst of that misery-making machinery? What is it in me that would identify with anything at all that as I revisit it, do you understand? You're not visiting it for the first time. You're revisiting some image that you had an identification with that didn't come to pass. So my idea of a good pastime is to revisit something that didn't work out so that then I can regret myself, and then out of that regret either find another confirmation of what a miserable failure I am in life, or if I could dredge up one more time, I'll just go back one more time into that thing. I'll just revisit it because this time, I swear to God, I'm going to be a champ. And when it's laid out, it's ludicrous. That's what this class does, is it lays out what you don't yet see is a ludicrous relationship with something that cannot wait to lash you as you identify with what it offers you. Identification is what? Fixation. Can you not see exactly what he's talking about? It brings up where I failed, brings up what I could have, should have done, been. And the minute my mind fastens onto that, what happens to me? Everything down into this narrow focus. And the more focused I am on that one thing that is painful, the more isolated I am from everything around me. And then all I know how to do in the pain of that isolation is try to figure out how to get unisolated again. You just have to see it. Good example, Robert. Good example. Stay awake. On we go, Kate.
All right, we have 10 minutes left, and we've got Neil with his hand up. We're going to go to Neil, and then time for others to jump in as well, if you wish. So here's Neil.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Guy.
Hi.
You went through it kind of quickly during your talk about a person can be aware that they are doing the identification, fixation, imagination, resistance. So my question would be, I know I'm doing it. And you kind of said something real quick about it. You can even be aware of that you're actually doing it. But you didn't give me the end part. What do I do about it in that moment? To allow myself to become conscious of my resistance. Like, I know I need a new mind, but during those moments of resistance to a situation.
I got you. Listen, Neil, listen.
Okay, cool.
Listen,
Thanks.
we have to be ruthlessly honest and clear. I say, I know I'm doing this. If I knew that I was doing something in any given moment that was impossible to rescue me from the pain of what I was doing in that moment, I would stop doing it in a heartbeat. Now, our problem is that we can understand and see some of that, but here I am and I see some of that and I can't stop. I can't stop. I know I shouldn't have an enemy. I shouldn't think about tomorrow's tormenting possibilities. I shouldn't revisit where it was that I lost all hope when I was a kid. I know I shouldn't. And then I catch myself in some way. I can feel the pain of it. And the minute that I catch myself in the pain of it, the only thing that happens to me is that I sit there and I don't want to be in that moment. There's no such thing as not being in the moment I don't want. Write it down. There's no such thing as not being in the moment I don't want. The moment I'm in is what I don't want. That's what I don't want, is this moment that's made by me not wanting to be in it. This isn't double talk, Jill. It's just a fact. My mind is going with this, so I'll say it. There are certain passages that I'd give my eye teeth to spend a few minutes with some of these people. Certain things have been said so ruthlessly, distinctly clear, concise, and honest, so as to be almost too clear to see. I don't do the good I would, I do the evil I would not. What is Paul saying? He's saying that he has seen that while on one hand he knows resisting any moment is because of being identified with mammon, with infinite desire, infinite appetite. You see, I can see that. And I know it's not just ridiculous, it goes against everything that I know is true. To sit and wish that my brothers in the monastery wouldn't make the noises that they do, or that whatever it is that germinated the letters that he wrote. And yet, I can't not do it. But where he understood, and you must, and by the way, part of our talks coming up in the December talks, is that here I am and I know better than to resist. And here I am and all I can do is resist. Which side shall I take? Shall I take the side of fighting with this moment and wishing it weren't that way? No, I know that's ludicrous. Well, then should I take the side of being someone who knows that I shouldn't fight with this moment? No, that's ludicrous, because if I knew I shouldn't fight with it, I wouldn't be fighting with it. There's something in between. There's something in between. That's what you must find out. Because it's in the awareness that is created when these opposing forces meet that the appearance of them is evident as being unable by either side to reconcile itself. And when it is clear that no side that sets itself against another side can change or reconcile the side it has set itself against, then you are finally in the land of the unknown. You are finally someplace where you cannot know. But you do know better than to not take sides. That's the best I can do, Neil. I hope somehow that helps you.
Well, that's it, Guy. No more hands in the queue, no questions.
Very well.
Probably wrap it up.
Well, just the last comment is one more iteration of the main lesson, which is identification is. And if I see that identification is fixation, what will happen to me? I won't know who to be. Good night.